Good morning, everyone. I'm Denise Smiler, Chair of the Pennsylvania Gaming Control Board. Before we begin, I would like to ask everyone to please silence your cell phones and all electronic devices. Also, while masks are no longer mandatory, please feel free to wear a mask if you believe it is required or necessary for your own well-being. Additionally, due to some new ongoing equipment installations, we will not have use of the monitors today. So if you look up, you can see they're blank. And with that, I'd like to call today's meeting to order. In addition to the 6 board members present, we also have our ex officio members, George Augusto, representing Russell Redding, Secretary for the Department of Agriculture, Kristen Heidingsfelder, representing Daniel Hassel, Secretary for the Department of Revenue, and Jennifer Langen, representing Stacy Garrity, State Treasurer. Thank you all for joining us. I should have done that first. As the first order of business, I'd ask everyone to please stand and join me for a recitation of the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
By way of announcements, the board held an executive session yesterday, Tuesday, August 16th, to discuss personnel matters, pending litigation, and to conduct quasi-judicial deliberations relating to matters coming before the board. Next, may I have a motion to approve the transcript and minutes of the board's May 18th, 2022 meeting?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Manzano-Diaz moves that the board approve the minutes and the transcript of May 18th, 2022 meeting.
Commissioner Mustio seconds.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? The motion is adopted. We will now hear from Danette Bixler-George, Human Resources Director. Danette?
Good morning, Chair, board members. The Office of Human Resources has 2 motions for your consideration today relative to the hiring of 3 individuals and the amendment of the pay structure for non-union management employees. The following 3 individuals have completed the background investigation and drug screening and are ready for presentation to the board. First, Brian McCool has been selected as a casino compliance representative for Mohegan Sun Casino and is recommended for hire by Chris Schroeder, Director of Casino Compliance. Next, Valerie Voss has been selected as casino compliance representative for Hollywood Casino Morgantown and is recommended for hire by Christopher Schroeder, Director of Casino Compliance. Finally, Holly Eicher has been selected as a senior counsel in the Office of Chief Counsel and is recommended for hire by Stephen Cook, Chief Counsel. Unless you have questions, I ask that the board consider a motion to approve the hiring actions as indicated.
Any questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Mustio moves that the board approve the applicants for hire as proposed by the Human Resources Director.
Commissioner Ralston seconds.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion is adopted.
The second motion seeks to adopt amendments to the PGCB classification and compensation structure. As you are aware, the original classification and compensation structure was adopted by the board in January 2011 based on comparative data across public sector markets in conjunction with a Hay evaluation measuring each job specification based on problem-solving, know-how, and accountability factors, and at that time contained 2 pay structures, one for non-union and one for executive. In October of 2019, the board adopted a new classification and compensation structure with a single pay structure for all non-union management represented employees. This single pay structure was adjusted in May of 2021. Our primary comparator for our pay ranges is the Commonwealth Standard Schedule, which was adjusted on August 13th, 2022, just recently. As a result, the May 2021 pay schedule that was approved by the board will have PGC pay ranges being below the pay ranges for comparable positions in administrative agencies. Based on the analysis of this comparative benchmark data, we have adjusted the minimum and the maximum of the ranges by 3% to allow the PGCB ranges to remain competitive with and comparable to the Commonwealth Standard Pay Schedule. With the board's adoption, the amended schedule would become effective retroactive back to July 2nd, 2022. I would be happy to answer any questions that you may have regarding this matter.
Any questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please?
Commissioner Ralston moves that the board approve the amendments to the PGCB's management compensation structure as described by the Human Resource Director.
Commissioner Regan seconds.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion is adopted.
Thank you.
Thank you, Danette. Next is Chief Counsel Steve Cook.
Morning.
Good morning.
Today, the board has 4 petitions before it for considerations. These matters will all be decided on the documentary record by agreement of the parties, and the board has, in advance of today's meeting, been provided with all the documents filed of record prior to today. The first petition before the board is Downs Racing LP's petition to waive Section 465A.90 of the Pennsylvania Gaming Control Board's regulations. Pursuant to that provision, an employee of the surveillance department of a casino may not accept the job as a gaming employee in that same facility unless either 1 year has passed from the time of his surveillance employment or the board waives the regulation at the request of the licensee. Downs is requesting board approval to allow Mark Wojtek, a surveillance lead in the surveillance department at Downs, to be internally promoted to the position of compliance generalist within the legal department. A compliance generalist is a gaming employee responsible for coordinating and ensuring adherence to the regulatory guidelines and reports, in that position reports to the compliance administrator. Downs avers that Mr. Wojtek's current position in the surveillance department is not in conflict with this new position, specifically because in Mr. Wojtek's new position, he will no longer be under the supervision of the surveillance department. The legal department is not monitored by the surveillance department and is located in office space which is neither on the gaming floor nor in the count room, the casino count room. Also, Mr. Wojtek will no longer have access to the surveillance department, and his permissions and access capabilities related to surveillance-related IT will be rescinded. The Office of Enforcement Counsel has reviewed this matter and has no objections to the waiver of this regulation under these circumstances, and this matter is now ripe for the board's consideration.
Any questions or comments from the board? May I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Regan moves that the board grant Downs Racing LP's petition for waiver of the PGCB's regulations as described by the Office of Chief Counsel.
Commissioner Dermody seconds.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries.
The next petition before the board today is Mount Airy No. 1 LLC's petition to amend grantor trusts. By way of background, Mount Airy No. 1 LLC is the holder of a Category 2 slot machine license and operates the Mount Airy Casino Resort. Mount Airy is a wholly owned subsidiary of Mount Airy Holdco LLC, and the ownership of Holdco is vested in 7 trusts. Nicola DeNaples is a beneficiary of both the Grantor Trust 2 of Lisa DeNaples and the Grantor Trust 2 for the benefit of the children of Nicholas DeNaples. Based upon his status as a beneficiary of these 2 trusts, Nicola DeNaples is a beneficial owner of Mount Airy and is required to be licensed as a principal. Language in each of these trusts state that a beneficiary shall comply with the regulatory requirements imposed by the board and shall not engage in conduct that may jeopardize the issuance of a gaming license. On November 26, 2021, Nicola DeNaples was arrested for various traffic offenses, including attempting to flee or elude police. The arrest and charges were self-reported to the Office of Enforcement Counsel and the Bureau of Investigations and Enforcement. Based upon the requirements of the 2 grantor trusts, Nicola DeNaples was advised by the trustees of those trusts that his principal license must be surrendered and he be removed as a beneficiary of the trusts. OEC has no objection to the requested relief to begin the process of amending the trust. However, it's noteworthy that the trust amended language will come before the board at a later point, at a later meeting, but at this point we are just authorizing Nicola's removal as a beneficiary of these trusts and the surrender of his license, and this matter is now ready for the board's consideration.
Any questions or comments from the board? May I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Dermody moves that the board grant Mount Airy No. 1 LLC's petition to amend the Grantor Trust 2 for the benefit of the children of Nicholas DeNaples and the Grantor Trust 2 of Lisa DeNaples as described by the Office of Chief Counsel.
Commissioner Manzano Diaz, second.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion is adopted.
J&J Ventures Gaming of Pennsylvania LLC and Commonwealth Gaming LLC have the next joint petition before the board. It seeks approval of a change of ownership. Specifically, both entities are licensed by the board to operate video gaming terminals at truck stops in Pennsylvania. J&J Ventures and Commonwealth Gaming have entered into a purchase agreement under which J&J Ventures will acquire all of Commonwealth Gaming's assets and equipment. They will also acquire all of Commonwealth Gaming's terminal placement agreements. Following the close of the purchase agreement, Commonwealth Gaming will no longer have any terminal placement agreements or gaming assets. Additionally, Commonwealth Gaming has agreed that it will eventually surrender all necessary licenses with the board. The Office of Enforcement Counsel has no objection to the relief requested, specifically that this transaction be allowed to go to settlement, subject to several conditions outlined in OEC's answer. And additionally, OEC has no objection to a request for confidentiality that was filed in this matter, and this matter is now ripe for the board's consideration.
Any questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Manzano Diaz moves that the board grant J&J Ventures Gaming of Pennsylvania LLC's and Commonwealth Gaming LLC's joint petition for approval of change of ownership as described by the Office of Chief Counsel. I further move that the petitioner's request for confidentiality be granted.
Commissioner Mustillo seconds.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion is adopted.
The final petition before the board today is a joint request from Light and Wonder, Inc. and Endeavor Group Holdings, Inc. for approval of a change in ownership of several entities currently owned by Light and Wonder, Inc. By way of background, Light and Wonder is a licensed affiliate of NYX Digital Gaming USA, LLC, a licensed sports wagering manufacturer in Pennsylvania, and SG Sports Wagering manufacturer. SG Gaming, Inc., a licensed slot machine, table games, VGT, interactive gaming, and sports wagering manufacturer. Both NYX and SG Gaming are wholly owned subsidiaries of Light & Wonder. Don Best Sports Corporation is a certified gaming service provider, and Sportscast Pty Limited is a registered interactive gaming and sports wagering provider, both of which are wholly owned subsidiaries of SG Gaming and therefore indirectly owned by Light & Wonder. In September of 2021, Endeavor Group Holdings, Inc., and one of its indirect subsidiaries, Endeavor Operating Company, LLC, entered into an equity purchase agreement where Endeavor Operating Company or one of its subsidiaries would acquire all of the equity interests in 17 different entities owned by Light & Wonder, including NYX, Don Best, and Sportscast, which, as I indicated, are licensed in Pennsylvania. Endeavor and its subsidiaries conduct business in various areas in the entertainment industry, including hosting and promoting sporting events, management, representation, marketing, and content development. Based upon the proposed acquisition, Endeavor and all applicable subsidiaries in the chain of ownership have filed for the appropriate licenses to be awarded to them. The agreement anticipates the equity interest in the 17 entities, again, including NYX, Don Best, and Sportscast, will be acquired by WME IMG LLC, a wholly owned subsidiary of Endeavor OpCo, and a majority owned subsidiary of Endeavor Group Holdings Incorporated. The Office of Enforcement Counsel has evaluated this transaction and has no concerns or objections to it, subject to the conditions outlined in its answer, and this matter is now ripe for the board's consideration.
Any questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, may I have a motion?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Regan moves that the board grant Light & Wonder Incorporated's and Endeavor Group Holdings Incorporated's joint petition for approval of change in ownership of certain affiliates as described by the Office of Chief Counsel. I further move that the parties' requests for confidentiality be granted.
Commissioner Dermody seconds.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion is granted. Motion carries.
Next, presenting withdrawals and reports and recommendations will be Deputy Chief Counsel Chad Zimmerman.
Good morning, Commissioners. The next matter before the Board today pertains to several unopposed petitions to withdraw applications or surrender the credentials of the following individuals and entities: Better Collective Tennessee, LLC, Andrew Hajpian, Matthew Heinhold, Joshua Hughes, Jose Pachenchik, Tomasz Zhivpel, Rock Yuhan, Jonathan Kaplowitz, Carl Klinberg, Samantha Leibman, Audra Mitchell, Matthew Maddox, Harry Lee Yu, Veronica Wilson, William Zender, Carl Sotosanti, and Chester TL Partners, LLC. The Office of Enforcement Counsel has no objections to any of these withdrawals or surrenders. As a result, if the Board chooses to grant the requests in each case, it would be doing so without prejudice to the requester, and these matters are all now ripe for the Board's consideration.
Any questions or comments from the Board? Hearing none, may I have a motion?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Mustia moves that the Board issue orders to approve the withdrawals and surrenders as described by the Office of Chief Counsel.
Commissioner Ralston seconds.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion is adopted.
Next before the Board's consideration are 7 reports and recommendations received from the Office of Hearings and Appeals. These reports and recommendations, along with the evidentiary record for each hearing, have been provided to the Board in advance of this meeting. Additionally, the persons involved or a representative of the person have each been notified that the Board is considering their matter today, and they may have the ability to come forward and briefly address the Board. If any of the persons who are subject to one of these reports and recommendation or a representative would like to address the Board, I would ask them to come forward when the matter is called. The first report and recommendation pertains to Teresa Coleman. In March 2018, Ms. Coleman was issued a non-gaming employee registration to work as an EVS attendant at Harrah's Philadelphia Casino and Racetrack. Ms. Coleman is not currently employed in the Pennsylvania gaming industry. On July 27, 2021, the Office of Enforcement Counsel filed a complaint to suspend Ms. Coleman's registration after it was discovered that she had been charged with misdemeanor and felony controlled substance offenses. A hearing was held on this matter, and thereafter, a report and recommendation was issued recommending suspension of her registration. However, prior to the report and recommendation's issuance, Ms. Coleman's charges were dismissed. In February 2022, after discovering that the controlled substance offenses had been dismissed, Ms. Coleman had new criminal charges filed against her. OEC filed a motion to reopen the record and filed an amended complaint citing the new offenses. Ms. Coleman had been charged with murder, conspiracy to commit murder, possession of the instruments of a crime, and tampering with evidence. Specifically, it is alleged that Ms. Coleman's vehicle had been stolen, and she and a co-conspirator tracked down the individual who had stolen it to a parking lot, and the co-conspirator then stabbed the thief multiple times and then drove away in Ms. Coleman's car with Ms. Coleman. The victim later died from his injuries. A hearing in this matter was held May of 2022. Ms. Coleman is currently incarcerated and did not attend the hearing. OEC appeared and presented testimony and documentary evidence, and subsequently the report and recommendation was issued recommending that her registration be suspended based on the charges. This matter is now ready for the Board's consideration.
Any questions or comments from the Board? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please?
Commissioner Ralston moves that the Board adopt the report and recommendation issued by the Office of Hearings and Appeals regarding the suspension of Teresa Coleman's non-gaming employee registration as described by the Office of Chief Counsel.
Commissioner Regan seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion is adopted.
Richard Santiago is the subject of the next report and recommendation before the Board. Mr. Santiago holds a Gaming Level 2 employee occupation permit and worked as a security assistant shift manager at Live Casino and Hotel in Philadelphia. In June of 2022, the Office of Enforcement Counsel filed a request for an emergency suspension of Mr. Santiago's G2 permit after receiving notice that he had been charged with multiple felonies after it is alleged he had an inappropriate contact with his underage stepdaughter. As a result of these charges, the Board's executive director issued an emergency suspension, suspending Mr. Santiago's G2 permit as requested by the Office of Enforcement Counsel. A hearing in this matter was held June 27, 2022. OEC appeared offering testimony and documentary evidence, and Mr. Santiago failed to appear for the hearing. Based upon the evidence received, the report and recommendation recommends that the suspension of Mr. Santiago's permit remain in effect, and this matter is now ready for the board's consideration.
Any questions or comments from the board? May I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Regan moves that the board adopt the report and recommendation issued by the Office of Hearings and Appeals as described by the Office of Chief Counsel, and that the suspension of Richard Santiago's Gaming Level 2 employee permit remain in effect.
Commissioner Dermody seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
Next before the board is a report and recommendation pertaining to Golden Glow Carpet Cleaners, Inc. and Scott Golden. There is a representative for Mr. Golden. In May 2017, Golden Glow submitted its application for a gaming service provider certification, and Scott Golden submitted his application for qualifier status. Thereafter, the Bureau of Licensing gave Golden Glow interim authorization to provide services to Rivers Casino Philadelphia. In December 2019, the Office of Enforcement Counsel sent to Golden Glow and Mr. Golden a notice recommending denial of their applications due to the filing of a bankruptcy and multiple federal and state tax liens filed against them. On December 10, 2019, Golden Glow and Mr. Golden requested a hearing. After several continuances due to the COVID-19 pandemic, additional filings of the parties, and an order from Office of Hearings and Appeals to stay the matter pending a bankruptcy filing, a hearing was finally held February 15, 2022. During the hearing, OEC presented testimony and documentary evidence showing that Golden Glow and Mr. Golden owed over $700,000 in tax obligations. That is a part of the bankruptcy they're required to file a reorganization plan and pay all their tax liabilities off in 5 years. It was also presented at the hearing that in addition to working for Rivers Casino Philadelphia, Mr. Golden and Golden Glow also provided to several other Pennsylvania casinos, resulting in payments of $1,260,000 to Golden Glow. Additionally, OEC testified that Golden Glow was non-compliant in their tax obligation with the Department of Revenue and the Department of Labor. Mr. Golden appeared at the hearing with counsel. Mr. Golden testified that he started his carpet cleaning business in 1981 and serviced mainly movie theaters. However, between 2001 and 2010, he began experiencing a downturn in business due to the movie theater industry experiencing change and consolidation. This resulted in him losing a significant amount of his business at movie theaters, causing him to solicit business elsewhere, specifically casinos, off-track betting sites, and schools. During his business economic hardship, he had to borrow money to try and pay taxes, was forced to borrow in the form of hard lending companies for a period of time, and sold properties to attempt to save his business. Mr. Golden additionally testified that he continues to pay his employees, he works double shifts, and is committed to paying all of his outstanding tax debts while following a payment plan with the Department of Revenue and the Internal Revenue Service. The bankruptcy attorney for the applicants also testified to the specifics of the bankruptcy filing, the terms and the potential reorganization plan, and payment plans that the applicant is required to follow, and that they are currently compliant with all tax plans. After hearing all the evidence presented, a report and recommendation was issued recommending that Golden Glow and Mr. Golden's applications be granted and finding them suitable for licensure. OEC filed exceptions to the report and recommendation, restating their position that they're not comfortable with recommending approval of an applicant who owes over $700,000 in tax obligations. However, OEC would request that if the board were to approve the applications or to find them suitable for licensure, that Golden Glow and Mr. Golden provide every 6 months updates on the status of their payment plans on all government debts owed. This matter is now ready for the board's consideration, and I believe a representative for Mr. Golden is present.
I would ask the representative to please state your name and spell it for the court reporter, and if you are a non-attorney, be sworn in.
My name is Joseph Hosey. Hosey is spelled H-O-S-E-Y. I'm an associate with Hensel Grad. Thank you, members of the board, for providing Golden Glow with a fair process and the resources in order for Golden Glow to be heard. Golden Glow understands that participating in the Pennsylvania gaming is a privilege, and that in order to continue working in the gaming, they must abide by all relevant laws. They will continue to comply with all relevant laws and will adhere to the agreements that they had with the IRS and the PA Department of Revenue. Thank you.
Thank you. Office of Enforcement Counsel, would you like to make a statement, or if you have any questions for Mr. Hosey?
No, we don't have any questions. Cyrus Petrie, P-I-T-R-E, Chief Enforcement Counsel. The only thing I'd like to add is that the only reason that OEC did not approve this with conditions during the application process was because of the amount of the debt. We don't have any overall objection if the board wishes to license Golden Glow. We only ask that you please implement the conditions so that we can ensure that Department of Revenue, the state receives its taxes, and that the federal government receives its tax payments. Those are the only real concerns that we have about this applicant.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from the board at this time? And Golden Glow is compliant right now with all of its tax obligations?
Yes, I understand that no new evidence can be presented, but I do have the bank statements that show payments have been made and are current with both the IRS and the PADOR.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Dermody moves that the board adopt the report and recommendation issued by the Office of Hearings and Appeals as described by the Office of Chief Counsel, and that Golden Glow Carpet Cleaner, Inc.'s Gaming Service Provider Certification Application and Scott Golden's Gaming Service Provider Qualifier Application be permitted to continue in the licensing process.
Commissioner Manzano-Diaz, second.
And I'm sorry, Commissioner Dermody, continue with the licensing process, would that include what OEC has requested as far as?
Any conditions that
Any
the
conditions?
OEC
Okay.
with regards to payments?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And thank you, Commissioner Manzano-Diaz. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion is adopted. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
AG's request for removal from the interactive gaming self-exclusion list is the subject of the next report and recommendation. On February 25th, 2022, an individual with the initials AG electronically submitted a request to be placed on the self-exclusion list for interactive gaming for a period of 1 year. In March of 2022, AG filed a petition requesting early removal from the list, alleging that he only wanted to be excluding from interactive gaming in Pennsylvania, not from casinos or other entities. He further stated that he is a Diamond member at Caesar Rewards, and as a result of this placement on the list, they deactivated his account and he is no longer allowed to stay at the resort, despite the fact his family had a planned vacation. AG also stated in his request for removal that the conditions placed on him as a result of signing up on the interactive gaming self-exclusion list are hidden in the self-exclusion forms, that the forms are misleading, and therefore he wasn't fully aware of the ramifications of placing himself on the list. A hearing in this matter was held June 22nd, 2022. OEC appeared and presented testimony and documentary evidence. However, AG failed to appear at the hearing. Evidence presented by OEC showed that AG filled out the iGaming self-exclusion request form, initialed and signed all of the acknowledgments, chose the self-exclusion period, and then signed, indicating that he was choosing to self-exclude. After hearing the evidence presented, a report and recommendation was issued recommending that AG's petition be denied and he remain on the list for the period of his chosen self-exclusion, and this matter is now ready for the board's consideration.
Any questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, may I have a motion?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Manzano-Diaz moves that the board adopt the report and recommendation issued by the Office of Hearings and Appeals as described by the Office of Chief Counsel, and that AG remain on the self-exclusion list.
Commissioner Mustillo seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion is adopted.
LW's request from removal from several self-exclusion lists is the subject of the next report and recommendation. On November 20th, 2021, an individual with the initials LW electronically submitted requests to be placed on the interactive gaming, fantasy contest, and video gaming terminal self-exclusion list for a 5-year period. In March of 2022, LW filed a petition requesting removal from all 3 lists. He stated that at the time he placed himself on the list, he felt he was spending too much money on online gambling, that he did not fully understand the terms of the exclusion, and did not intend to exclude himself from brick-and-mortar casinos. A hearing in this matter was held on May 4th, 2022. OEC appeared and presented testimony and documentary evidence. LW appeared and presented and testified on his own behalf. OEC presented testimony from the director of the board's Office of Compulsive and Problem Gambling regarding the process that LW had to go through to place himself on all 3 lists. Evidence presented included the 3 sets of exclusion forms and the acknowledgement signed by LW choosing the exclusion period, stating he reviewed the forms and understood what the information included provides, which includes notices that the licensees could ban them from their properties by being placed on those lists. LW testified he did in fact place himself on all 3 lists, and he should have paid more attention to the ramifications of his enrollment. He further testified he wanted to exclude from interactive gaming because he didn't think it was good to have that access. He then further admitted that the documents did in fact contain the language warning him that licensees could ban him from their casinos, even though it was not the outcome he was looking for. After hearing the evidence presented, a report and recommendation was issued recommending that LW's request for removal from the 3 self-exclusion lists be denied, and that matter is now before the board for consideration.
Any questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, may I have a motion?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Mustillo moves that the board adopt the report and recommendation issued by the Office of Hearings and Appeals as described by the Office of Chief Counsel, and that LW remain on the interactive gaming, fantasy contest, and video gaming terminal self-exclusion lists.
Commissioner Ralston seconds.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries.
The next report and recommendation before the board today stems from another request from removal from the self-exclusion list. In September 2019, an individual with the initials EAA met with a casino compliance representative and filled out all the necessary paperwork to be placed on the self-exclusion list, choosing the lifetime self-exclusion option. In September 2021, EAA filed a petition requesting removal from the self-exclusion list. The Office of Enforcement Counsel filed an answer objecting to the request, and a hearing was held on January 5th, 2022. OEC appeared and presented testimony and documentary evidence. EAA also appeared and testified on his own behalf. Subsequently, a report and recommendation was issued recommending denial of EAA's request. On July 18, 2022, EAA sent an email to the Office of Hearings and Appeals asking to withdraw his initial request for removal from the self-exclusion list due to declining health. This current request renders EAA's initial request for removal from the list moot. However, due to the issuance of the report and recommendation, the board must render a decision in the matter. This matter is now ripe for the board's consideration.
Any questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please?
Commissioner Ralston moves that, given EAA's request to withdraw his petition for removal from the self-exclusion list, the report and recommendation issued by the Office of Hearings and Appeals be deemed mute as described by the Office of Chief Counsel, and that EAA remain on the self-exclusion list.
Commissioner Regan seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion is adopted.
The final report and recommendation before the board today pertains to CB's request for removal from the casino and interactive gaming self-exclusion list. On March 8th, 2022, an individual with the initial CB electronically submitted requests to be placed on both the casino and interactive gaming self-exclusion lists, choosing the lifetime option. Subsequently, CB filed a petition 2 weeks later requesting removal from both lists. The Office of Enforcement Counsel filed an answer objecting to the requests. A hearing was held on May 5th, 2022. OEC appeared and presented testimony and documentary evidence. CB also appeared, testified on her own behalf, and calling additional witnesses. CB testified that when completing the self-exclusion forms for both the casino and interactive gaming self-exclusion lists, she was looking for a way to delete her interactive gaming accounts and corresponding bank information, not to self-exclude. She stated she clicked through an interactive gaming website, which brought her to the board's self-exclusion website. She filled out the forms and initialed them, but did not fully read the documents. CB also testified that she recently filled out electronic forms for the purchase of her home, didn't fully read those, but signed them when required. She also stated that she had to sign e-forms for a lease agreement for a salon and read those more carefully. CB's mother also testified on her behalf, stating that she does have ADHD and did not thoroughly read through the documentation. OEC provided testimony and documentary evidence showing how detailed the forms are and that CB correctly completed all forms, and how unlikely it would be that they would be properly filled out if they were not read and understood. After hearing the evidence presented, a report and recommendation was issued recommending denial of CB's request for removal from the 2 self-exclusion lists, and that matter is now ready for the board's consideration.
Any questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please?
Commissioner Regan moves that the board adopt the report and recommendation issued by the Office of Hearings and Appeals as described by the Office of Chief Counsel, and that CB remain on both the casino self-exclusion list and the interactive gaming self-exclusion list.
Commissioner Dermody seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion is adopted.
That concludes the matters of the Office of Chief Counsel.
Thank you, Steve and Chad. We will now have the Bureau of Licensing Matters presented by Director Sean Hannon. Sean?
Good morning, Madam Chair Smiler and members of the board. Today's first licensing matter is the renewal of a table game manufacturer license for the United States Playing Card Company. The United States Playing Card Company is a Kentucky-based manufacturer of playing cards and card-dealing shoes. The Bureau of Investigation and Enforcement has completed its investigation of the company, and the Bureau of Licensing has provided you with a background investigation and suitability report regarding the renewal. I have provided you with a draft order and asked the board consider the order to renew the table game manufacturer license of the United States Playing Card Company.
The Office of Enforcement Counsel has no objection.
Any questions or comments from the board? May I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Dermody moves that the board grant the table game manufacturer license renewal as described by the Bureau of Licensing.
Commissioner Manzano-Diaz, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion is adopted.
Next are principal and key employee licenses. The Bureau of Licensing provided you with a proposed order for 10 principals and 11 key employees. I ask that the board consider the order approving these licenses.
The Office of Enforcement Counsel has no objection.
Any questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, may I have a motion?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Manzano-Diaz moves that the board grant the principal and key employee licenses as described by the Bureau of Licensing.
Commissioner Mustio seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion is adopted.
There are also key employee temporary credentials. The Bureau of Licensing provided you with an order regarding the issuance of temporary credentials for 1 principal and 27 key employees. I ask the board consider the order approving these credentials.
The Office of Enforcement Counsel has no objection.
Any questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Mustio moves that the board grant the temporary principal and key employee credentials as described by the Bureau of Licensing.
Commissioner Ralston seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
Additionally, for your consideration are gaming employee permits and non-gaming employee registrations. The Bureau of Licensing has provided you with a list of 539 individuals to whom the Bureau has granted temporary or full occupation permits, and 186 individuals to whom the Bureau has granted registrations under the authority delegated to the Bureau of Licensing. I ask the board consider a motion approving the order.
The Office of Enforcement Counsel has no objection.
Any questions or comments from the board? May I have a motion, please?
Commissioner Ralston moves that the board approve the applications for gaming employee occupation permits and non-gaming employee registrations as described by the Bureau of Licensing.
Commissioner Regan seconds.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion is adopted.
Next, there is a recommendation of denial for 5 gaming applicants and 2 non-gaming applicants. The applicants were notified that they were being recommended for denial and failed to request a hearing within the specified timeframe. The Bureau of Licensing has provided you with orders addressing the applicants who the Office of Enforcement Counsel has recommended for denial. I ask that the board consider the orders approving the denials.
The Office of Enforcement Counsel continues to request denial in each instance.
Any questions or comments from the board? May I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Regan moves that the board deny the gaming and non-gaming employee applications as described by the Bureau of Licensing.
Commissioner Dermody seconds.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion is adopted.
The next matter for your consideration are withdrawal requests. In each case, the license, permit, or registration is no longer required. For today's meeting, I have provided the board with 2 key employees, 3 gaming employees, and 2 non-gaming applicants. I ask that the board consider the orders approving these withdrawals.
The Office of Enforcement Counsel has no objection.
Any questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Dermody moves that the board grant the withdrawal of key employee gaming and non-gaming employee applications as described by the Bureau of Licensing.
Commissioner Manzano-Diaz, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion's adopted.
In addition, we have an order to renew the gaming service provider certifications for the following companies: Core BTS Incorporated and Halifax Security Incorporated, doing business as North American Video. I have provided you with a draft order and ask the board consider the order certifying these companies.
The Office of Enforcement Counsel has no objection.
Any questions or comments from the board? May I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Manzano-Diaz moves that the board approve the gaming service provider certifications as described by the Bureau of Licensing.
Commissioner Mustillo seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion is adopted.
Finally, for your consideration are gaming service provider registrations. The Bureau of Licensing provided you with an order and an attached list of 2 registered gaming service provider applicants. I ask the board consider the order registering these gaming service providers.
The Office of Enforcement Counsel has no objection.
Any questions or comments from the board? May I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Mustillo moves that the board approve the gaming service provider registrations as described by the Bureau of Licensing.
Commissioner Ralston seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Sean. We will now hear from Chief Enforcement Counsel Cyrus Petrie.
Good morning, Chair, members of the board. The Office of Enforcement Counsel will present 16 matters today for the board's consideration, in which we will request the approval of 1 consent agreement, 3 suspensions, 1 revocation, and 11 involuntary exclusions. The next matter on the agenda for the board's consideration is a consent agreement between the Office of Enforcement Counsel and fantasy contest operator NHAPA LLC, doing business as No House Advantage. The matter will be presented by Assistant Enforcement Counsel Thomas Monahan. Is a representative for NHA present?
Please approach, sir.
Yes, come. Are you an attorney?
No, sir.
Okay, he's standing, be sworn. Give the court reporter your name.
Kevin Copel. What's that?
Say that again.
Kevin Copel.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be true and correct, best of your knowledge and belief?
Yes.
Mr. Coppell, could you spell your name, please?
Yes. Koepel.
Thank you.
Good morning, Thomas Monahan, Monaghan, with the Office of Enforcement Counsel. The next matter on the agenda for the board's consideration is a proposed consent agreement between the Office of Enforcement Counsel and NHA PA LLC, doing business as No House Advantage. This consent agreement involves a failure to notify of a change of control or ownership. NHA PA LLC was licensed as a fantasy contest operator by the PGCB on or about July 14th, 2021. NHA PA is a wholly owned subsidiary of No House Advantage LLC. No House Advantage LLC was licensed as an affiliate by the PGCB on or about July 14th, 2021. At the time of licensure on July 14th, 2021 until December 19th, 2021, No House Advantage LLC was owned 85% by Kevin Copel, 5% by Alex Fleschner, 5% by Eli Gordon, and 5% by Kevin Birnbaum. On or about December 20th, 2021, No House Advantage LLC made elections to be taxed as an S corporation. Following those elections, No House Advantage LLC redeemed the membership interests held by Fleschner, Gordon, and Birnbaum in accordance with their respective redemption agreements. Subsequent to the redemption of the membership interest held by those 3 individuals, Kevin Copel contributed all of the outstanding membership interest in No House Advantage LLC to No House Advantage Holdings, Inc. in exchange for all outstanding capital stock of No House Advantage Holdings, Inc. On or about December 22nd, 2021, No House Advantage Holdings, Inc. entered into a membership interest purchase and contribution agreement with the Centec LLC, pursuant to which No House Advantage Holdings, Inc. sold 41.49% of the membership interest in No House Advantage LLC to Centec. Immediately following the sale, No House Advantage Holdings, Inc. entered into a subscription and contribution agreement with the Centec, pursuant to which No House Advantage Holdings, Inc. contributed the remaining 58.51% membership interest in No House Advantage LLC to Centec in exchange for a 15% membership interest in Centec. Following the consummation of those transactions, Centec became the 100% parent of No House Advantage LLC. Centec is owned 85% by Corestone Partners Investments LLC and 15% owned by No House Advantage Holdings, Inc. Corestone is wholly owned by Corey Hawk, and NHA PA LLC remains wholly owned by No House Advantage LLC. On or about March 7th, 2022, Kevin Copel emailed the Bureau of Licensing to provide notification that No House Advantage LLC had undergone an ownership change. However, the change of ownership had occurred on or about December 22nd, 2021. No House Advantage LLC, Kevin Coppell, Ascentech, Corestone, and Corey Hawk failed to file a petition with the PGCB prior to the transaction and consummated the transaction before a petition had been approved by the board. On or about March 22nd, 2022, No House Advantage LLC filed a petition for a change in organizational structure. On or about March 25th, 2022, an application for principal licensure was filed for Corey Hawk. The board approved the petition with conditions at its July 20th, 2022 public meeting. At this time, the Office of Enforcement Counsel requests the board approve the proposed consent agreement, which requires that NHA PA LLC pay a civil penalty in the amount of $8,000 and an administration fee of $2,500 for costs incurred by OEC, BIE, and other related staff in connection with this matter. If you have any questions, we'd be happy to address them at this time.
Mr. Capel, would you like to make a statement or have any questions for Office of Enforcement Counsel?
Not at this time. I guess we do apologize for not notifying the board on time. Our general counsel at the time, who was Eli Gordon, did not inform that this was necessary. Since that time, with our new partners, we've retained IFRA Law Firm, one of the more respected gaming attorneys in the industry today. They're working with us very closely, and we look forward to definitely adhering to all regulations and everything going forward, and we're confident we'll be able to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please?
Commissioner Ralston moves that the board approve the consent agreement between the Office of Enforcement Counsel, NHA PA LLC, No House Advantage, as described by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Commissioner Regan seconds.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion is adopted. Thank you, Mr. Capel.
Thank you very much.
Did you come up from Florida?
Yes.
Thank you for making the trip.
No problem. It's a pleasure.
The next four matters on the agenda consist of enforcement actions in which the Office of Enforcement Counsel filed complaints seeking the suspension or revocation of employee registrations or employee occupation permits previously issued by the board. The complaints in each matter have been filed with the board's Office of Hearings and Appeal and properly served upon the individual named in each complaint. The individual named in each complaint failed to respond within 30 days as required by board regulation. As a result, the Office of Enforcement Counsel filed a request for default judgment in each instance and properly served the same upon each respondent. Therefore, the facts in each complaint are deemed admitted. All filed documents have been provided to the board, and the matters are presently ripe for the board's consideration. In each matter, we will provide a brief summary of the facts and make a request for the appropriate board action.
Thomas Monahan, once again with the Office of Enforcement Counsel. The next matter on the agenda for the board's consideration is the suspension of the gaming employee occupation permit issued to Carmine DiMaria. Mr. DiMaria was previously employed as a security officer at Valley Forge Casino. While employed as a security officer, Mr. DiMaria was discovered on the gaming floor at Valley Forge playing a slot machine on a scheduled day off in violation of board regulations. Mr. DiMaria is not currently employed in Pennsylvania's gaming industry. At this time, the Office of Enforcement Counsel requests the board suspend the gaming employee occupation permit issued to Carmine DiMaria for a period of 6 months.
Any questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Regan moves that the board approve the suspension of Carmine DiMaria's gaming employee occupation permit for the conduct described by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Commissioner Dermody seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
Good morning, Sarah Colasar, Kolesar, with the Office of Enforcement Counsel. The next matter on the agenda for the board's consideration is the suspension of the video gaming employee permit issued to Robert Frank Jr. Mr. Frank was previously employed as a cashier at licensed VGT establishment Quick Fill Store number 200. The Bureau of Investigations and Enforcement was notified that Mr. Frank was arrested in Crawford County, Pennsylvania, and charged with 22 counts of felony child pornography and 1 count of felony criminal use of communication facility. According to the associated docket sheets, all criminal charges remain pending. Mr. Frank is not currently employed in the Pennsylvania gaming industry. At this time, the Office of Enforcement Counsel requests that the board suspend the video gaming employee permit issued to Robert Frank Jr.
Any questions or comments from the board? May I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Dermody moves that the board approve the suspension of Robert Frank Jr.'s video gaming employee permit for the conduct described by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Commissioner Manzano Diaz, second.
I'm sorry. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? The motion is adopted.
The next matter on the agenda for the board's consideration is the suspension of the non-gaming employee registration issued to Elijah Randall. Mr. Randall was previously employed by Team Clean, Inc. as an EVS attendant associated with Live Casino and Hotel Philadelphia. The Bureau of Investigations and Enforcement was notified that Mr. Randall was arrested by the Philadelphia Police Department and charged with 1 count of theft by unlawful taking, a felony offense, 1 count of theft by unlawful taking, a misdemeanor offense, and 1 count of theft receiving stolen property, a felony offense. According to the Associated docket sheets, Mr. Randall was admitted to the Accelerated Rehabilitation Disposition Program related to these charges. Mr. Randall is not currently employed in Pennsylvania's gaming industry. At this time, the Office of Enforcement Counsel requests that the board suspend the non-gaming employee registration issued to Elijah Randall.
Any questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, may I have a motion?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Manzano Diaz moves that the board approve the suspension of Elijah Randall's non-gaming employee registration for the conduct described by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Commissioner Mustillo, seconds.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion is adopted.
The next matter on the agenda for the board's consideration is the revocation of the non-gaming employee registration issued to Keon Van. Mr. Van was previously employed by Team Clean, Inc. as an EVS attendant associated with Live Casino and Hotel Philadelphia. While performing his duties as an EVS attendant, Mr. Van took $200 from the gaming floor that had been dropped by a patron. Mr. Van proceeded to conceal the $200 in a cleaning towel and then place the towel in a trash dumpster. Shortly thereafter, Mr. Van retrieved the $200 and placed the money in his pants cargo pocket and then entered the back of the house. Mr. Van ended his shift and left the casino without reporting the found $200 or turning the money in to his supervisors. As a result of his actions, Mr. Van was terminated from his position, and the Pennsylvania State Police issued him a citation for theft of property lost, etc. by mistake, a third-degree misdemeanor. Mr. Van paid restitution, and as a result, the associated charge was withdrawn. Mr. Van is not currently employed in the Pennsylvania gaming industry. At this time, the Office of Enforcement Counsel requests that the board revoke the non-gaming employee registration issued to Keon Van.
Any questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Mustillo moves that the board approve the revocation of Keon Van's non-gaming employee registration for the conduct described by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Commissioner Ralston seconds.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries.
The remaining matters on the agenda consist of enforcement actions in which the Office of Enforcement Counsel filed petitions seeking the involuntary exclusion of individuals whose presence in a licensed facility are inimical to the interests of the Commonwealth and are licensed gaming therein. In each instance, a petition for exclusion has been filed with the Board's Office of Hearings and Appeal and properly served upon the individual named in the petition. The individual named in each petition failed to respond within 30 days as required by board regulation. As a result, the Office of Enforcement Counsel filed a request for default judgment in each instance and properly served the same upon each individual. Therefore, all facts in each petition are deemed admitted, all filed documents have been provided to the board, and the matters are presently ripe for the board's consideration. In each instance, if the board orders the proposed exclusion, each individual's photo, personal identifiers, and a summary of the inimical conduct will be placed on the board's public website. Once again, in each matter, we will provide a brief summary of the facts and make a request for the appropriate board action.
Once again, Sarah Kolosar with the Office of Enforcement Counsel. The next matter on the agenda for the board's consideration is a request to place Derek Brown on the board's involuntary exclusion list. Mr. Brown was present at the Rivers Pittsburgh Casino when he stole $200 worth of value chips and non-value chips from 3 patrons. When one of the patrons confronted him regarding the theft, Mr. Brown engaged in a verbal altercation with the patron. Mr. Brown then attempted to flee from security personnel and had to be placed in mechanical restraints prior to being escorted from the premises by Pennsylvania State Police. All monies were returned to the victims, and as a result, the victims did not wish for charges to be filed against Mr. Brown. As a result, the Pennsylvania State Police did not file charges related to this incident. As a result of Mr. Brown's actions, he was permanently evicted from Rivers Pittsburgh Casino. At this time, OEC requests that the board place Derek Brown on the board's involuntary exclusion list.
Any questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please?
Commissioner Ralston moves that the board approve the addition of Derek Brown to the PGCB involuntary exclusion list for the conduct described by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Commissioner Regan seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion's adopted.
Thomas Monahan, once again with the Office of Enforcement Counsel. The next 2 matters on the agenda for the board's consideration are related. Therefore, I will read one set of facts for both individuals. Sade Burton and Tyrese Pope left 2 children, ages 6 years old and 1 year old, unattended in their Valley Forge Casino hotel room while they gamed and consumed alcoholic beverages on the gaming floor. The children were discovered by a hotel bellman who heard the crying of children coming from the hotel room and believed that the adults staying in the room had left. Security and local police were notified and arrived at the room. The children were unattended for approximately 32 minutes before security and police arrived. Ms. Byrne and Mr. Pope were criminally charged and permanently evicted for their actions. At this time, the Office of Enforcement Counsel requests the board place Sade Byrne on the involuntary exclusion list.
Any questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please?
Commissioner Regan moves that the board approve the addition of Sade Burton to the PGCB involuntary exclusion list for the conduct described by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
May I have a second?
Commissioner Dermody seconds.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion's adopted.
At this time, the Office of Enforcement Counsel requests the board place Tyrese Pope on the involuntary exclusion list.
Any questions or comments from the board? May I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Dermody moves that the board approve the addition of Tyrese Pope to the Pennsylvania Gaming Control Board's involuntary exclusion list for the conduct described by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Commissioner Manzano Diaz, second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion's adopted.
The next matter on the agenda for the board's consideration is a request to place Anthony Eves Jr. on the board's involuntary exclusion list. Mr. Eves repeatedly violated his permanent ban and trespassed at Rivers Casino, Pittsburgh. Further, Mr. Eves was permanently banned from Hollywood Casino at the Meadows for his disruptive behavior and was also banned for 1 year from Live Casino, Pittsburgh for his conduct. Mr. Eves was criminally charged for his actions. At this time, the Office of Enforcement Counsel requests the board place Anthony Eves Jr. on the board's involuntary exclusion list.
Any questions or comments from the board? May I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Manzano Diaz moves that the board approve the addition of Anthony Eves Jr. to the PGCB involuntary exclusion list for the conduct described by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Commissioner Mustio seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion is adopted.
The next 2 matters on the agenda for the board's consideration are related. Therefore, I will read one set of facts for both individuals. Alora Esposito and Brandon Greiser stole the keys from a patron after the keys were dropped on the gaming floor at Valley Forge Casino. Ms. Esposito and Mr. Greiser drove around the parking lot until they located the patron's vehicle. They stole the patron's vehicle and left the property. Both individuals were permanently evicted for their actions. At this time, the Office of Enforcement Counsel requests the board place Alora Esposito on the involuntary exclusion list.
Any questions or comments from the board? May I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Mustio moves that the board approve the addition of Alora Esposito to the PGCB involuntary exclusion list for the conduct described by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Commissioner Ralston seconds.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion's adopted.
At this time, the Office of Enforcement Counsel requests the board place Brandon Greiser on the involuntary exclusion list.
Any questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please?
Commissioner Ralston moves that the board approve the addition of Brandon Greiser to the PGCB involuntary exclusion list for the conduct described by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Commissioner Regan seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion is adopted.
The next matter on the agenda for the board's consideration is a request to place Rashawn Richardson on the board's involuntary exclusion list. On numerous dates, Mr. Richardson cheated in multiple Pennsylvania casinos by switching his hands and capping and pitching wagers. Mr. Richardson was permanently evicted from Live Philadelphia, Harris Philadelphia, Parks, and Rivers Philadelphia for his cheating and was criminally charged for his actions. At this time, the Office of Enforcement Counsel requests the board place Rashawn Richardson on the board's involuntary exclusion list.
Any questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Regan moves that the board approve the addition of Rashawn Richardson to the PGCB involuntary exclusion list for the conduct described by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Commissioner Dermody seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
Good morning, Chair, members of the board. John Crowe, CROHE, for the Office of Enforcement Counsel. The next matter on the agenda for the board's consideration is a request to place Robert Boone III on the board's involuntary exclusion list. Mr. Boone stole $500 in chips from another patron at a baccarat table inside Parks Casino. Mr. Boone was charged with simple assault, theft, and resisting arrest for his actions. At this time, the Office of Enforcement Counsel requests that the board place Robert Boone III on the board's involuntary exclusion list.
Any questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Dermody moves that the board approve the addition of Robert Boone III to the Pennsylvania Gaming Control Board's involuntary exclusion list for the conduct described by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Commissioner Manzano-Diaz, second.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries.
The next matter on the agenda for the board's consideration is a request to place Russell Kinslow on the board's involuntary exclusion list. Mr. Kinslow conspired, facilitated, and encouraged others to engage in a credit card scheme to defraud Pennsylvania casinos. Mr. Kinslow was criminally charged for his actions. At this time, the Office of Enforcement Counsel requested the board place Russell Kinslow on the board's involuntary exclusion list.
Any questions or comments from the board? Is this the person that was in prison and doing this from prison?
That's correct.
And he was pretty successful over time, engaging others.
Not with this particular scam, I don't believe. They were listening to his calls because he was calling people outside of prison from in prison, so I think this was shut down pretty quickly.
That's good. It's amazing what you can do behind bars. Any other questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Manzano-Diaz moves that the board approve the addition of Russell Kinslow to the PGCB involuntary exclusion list for the conduct described by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Commissioner Mustillo seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion's adopted.
The next matter for the board's consideration is a petition to place Brandon Walker on the board's involuntary exclusion list. Mr. Walker was arrested in Parks Casino for being found in possession of narcotics and drug paraphernalia. At the time of his arrest, Mr. Walker also had an outstanding bench warrant. The Office of Enforcement Counsel now requests that the board place Brandon Walker on the involuntary exclusion list.
Any questions or comments from the board? May I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Mustillo moves that the board approve the addition of Brandon Walker to the PGCB involuntary exclusion list for the conduct described by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Commissioner Ralston seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion's adopted.
Good morning, Kelsey Scorado, SCIRROTTO, Assistant Enforcement Counsel with the Office of Enforcement Counsel. The next matter on the agenda for the board's consideration is a request to place Matthew Woodard on the board's involuntary exclusion list. While Mr. Woodard visited Presque Isle Downs and Casino, security asked him to leave the property after it was determined that he was intoxicated. Mr. Woodard refused, and the Pennsylvania State Police responded. Mr. Woodard argued with the police and did not comply with their orders. As police placed Mr. Woodard under arrest, he resisted and wrapped his arm around a Pennsylvania State Police corporal's neck. Mr. Woodard was criminally charged with felony aggravated assault and lesser-included offenses, as well as misdemeanor charges of resisting arrest, terroristic threats, and defiant trespass. He pled guilty to misdemeanor simple assault and misdemeanor resisting arrest. At this time, OEC requests that the board place Matthew Woodard on the board's involuntary exclusion list.
Any questions or comments from the board? May I have a motion, please?
Commissioner Ralston moves that the board approve the addition of Matthew Woodard to the PGCB involuntary exclusion list for the conduct described by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Commissioner Regan seconds.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion is adopted.
Thank you. That concludes our business.
Thank you, Cyrus. That concludes today's meeting. The next public meeting of the board will be held on Wednesday, September 21st, 2022, at 10 a.m. at this location. And now may I please have a motion to adjourn?
Commissioner Regan moves for adjournment.
Dermody seconds.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? We are now adjourned. Thank you, everyone.